All right, everybody. Welcome to Pro Football's first 50 years, where we try to bring the past back to life. Now, you can go on the internet and type in pretty much any game in particular, and you can get like maybe a little bit of a box score, especially if you're going back in time. You can get a box score. Maybe you might see, who scored what touchdowns, maybe what the lengths of each touchdowns were, the field goals or whatever. But exactly what happened during each game? Well, that's what I'm here to do. Let's try to explore a little more in depth and in detail what happened during the course of each and every game in the first 50 years of professional football. Now, just a little side note here. There ain't no fancy videos or nothing like that going on. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. So if that's all right with you, let's get it on. Now, the first game I got here, right, would be the Oshkosh All Stars. Oh, yeah, that powerhouse Oshkosh All Stars versus the Green Bay Packers at City Stadium, September 14th, 1930. Now, this was an exhibition. It was not really what called preseason games back then. Exhibition game. This is the first game before the Packers actually started their reign as champions, because in 1929 the Green Bay Packers won the championship. Now this is basically we're right in the midst right now of this game in the first three-peat in pro football history. Of course, it was 1920-21. It was called the American Professional Football Association. 1922, it turned into the NFL, which we know and love today. But from 1920 till today, the first ever three-peat was the 1929, 1930, 1931 Green Bay Packers. Not to be kind of confused with the 1922, 23, and 24 Bulldogs, who won the championship. Of course, in 22 was the Canton Bulldogs, 23 was the Canton Bulldogs, and 24 it was the Cleveland Bulldogs, who basically about half the roster was the Canton Bulldogs from the year before, but that's another story for another day. But the Green Bay Packers, 29, 30, 31 were very good. Very, very good. And so once again, 1930, they won the championship in 1920. It wasn't a championship. They had the best overall winning percentage. 1929. Well, once again, by the slimmest of margins over the New York Giants, they won the championship in 1930 as well. Now, let me share my screen here. And we'll show you. Here we go. We'll go over the Packers schedule here. This is the first game of their schedule, which we're talking about right here. The Oshkosh All Stars. They played a few games that particular season. Didn't have a phenomenal record. They were 3-3. A couple games got canceled. They lost to the Milwaukee Nighthawks. They lost to the Packers. They beat the Fond du Lac Cardinals. The Geneva Lavenders. They lost to the Lacrosse. I have no idea. And then they finally beat the Milwaukee Nighthawks. And a couple of games got canceled. Minneapolis Red Jacket game got canceled. So, not a phenomenal team. And they were not phenomenal on this particular day, as we will see. But here's the Packers schedule. The following Sundays, we're talking about September 14th. The following Sunday, they opened up their schedule against the Cardinals, and they played the Bears, Giants, and so on. Now you can see those Minneapolis Red Jackets were part of the NFL that year. And I believe their record was 10-3-1. 10-3-1. They finished with a 769 winning percentage. The Giants were 13-4. The Giants' winning percentage was 765. So by .004, the Green Bay Packers wound up winning the 1930 championship. Now, had this game right here counted in the standings, which it didn't, a tie is basically half a win, half a loss. This would have dropped their winning percentage down below this number here, and the New York Giants would have won the championship because the Giants were 13-4 with no ties. But the Packers, with this one tie, had ties counted in the standings as half a win, half a loss, once again, which they did not at this particular point in time. This would have dropped the Packers down below to 769, and the Giants would have won the championship. But it didn't matter. All right, so the Oshkosh All Stars. This is where the Green Bay Packers started their season out at. Now the game was played in City Stadium. And go over a little bit of the history, a little bit of City Stadium. Show you kind of like it was nothing really super duper to be marveled at that particular point in time. Let me go over. I got let's see, share screen. Got a few pictures here of City Stadium. Now this one here is from 1931. It's the first official aerial photograph of Green Bay Stadium by Otto Stiller. The Packers beat the Bears 7-0. City Stadium. Right. So you look, I mean, on the sides, nice grandstands, nothing super special. You can see the goalposts here. See some fans back here. Nothing. Once again, nothing super spectacular. Certainly doesn't look like Lambeau Field of the day. That is for sure. Let me share. I got a couple more things. I know I have another picture of City Stadium here. There we go. There's another photo of it. A little bit better, but this one's like in the 40s, I believe. City Stadium, located in Green Bay, Wisconsin. See how it starts taking on a little better of a shape right here. Like I said, this game was in the 40s, I believe. I don't know if it says it. Though City Stadium was the Packers' official home field in 1933 during the worst of the Great Depression, they began to play part of their home schedule in Milwaukee. And that was the case for quite a while. They played some of their home games in Green Bay. Some of them were played in Milwaukee. After holding one contest at a Borkert Field in 1933, the Packers played 2 or 3 home games each year in Milwaukee at State Fair Park from 1934 to 51, and at Marquette Stadium in 1952. The games were moved to County Stadium after it opened in 1953. This practice continued through 1994, after which they played all their game based solely in Green Bay, or basically Lambeau Field. So this is what it started. Got a little bit of a better shape to it. And then we got, let me stop sharing this here. And one more thing I got to talk about will be, good old Wikipedia. Read over a little bit of what Wikipedia has to say here. All right, here we go. City Stadium. Okay. And there's a little, it's 1948, kind of a color version of it. So you started taking a little bit better, a little nicer shape than it did in 1931. City Stadium, known as East Stadium from 1962 to 2002, is an American football stadium in Green Bay, Wisconsin. The stadium was built in 1925 for use by Green Bay East High School, located to the south of the stadium, and Green Bay Packers of the NFL. City Stadium was the third home field for the Packers, after Hagmeister Park and Bellevue Park, and remained as such until 1956. During this time, it was expanded from about 5,000 seats to 25,000 seats. In 1933, the Packers began splitting their home games between Green Bay and Milwaukee, a practice that lasted until 1994, as I, once again, had just previously mentioned. All right, the history. The Green Bay Packers were founded in 1919 by Curly Lambeau and George Whitney Calhoun. From 1919 to 1922, they played their home games at Hagemeister Park, a recreational area that hosted various sports and outdoor activities. Small wooden bleachers were constructed, with some fans lining the playing field or sitting on their cars to watch the games. After the property was used to build a new Green Bay East High School, the Packers moved to the other side of the East River to Bellevue Park, which had been constructed to house a local baseball team that had also played at Hagemeister. I'm probably butchering that name, so I do forgive. Please forgive me. The wood used for the bleachers at Hagemeister was reused to build a grandstand and bleachers at Bellevue. Bellevue Park had its challenges, with the field dimensions more conducive to baseball, its location far from town, and poor parking. After 2 seasons at Bellevue in 23 and 24, demand for a dedicated football stadium for the Packers grew. City Stadium was built just north of Green Bay East High School, meaning it was adjacent to the former Hagemeister Park. The stadium was developed for use by Green Bay, Green East High School, or Green Bay East High School and Green Bay West High School. But in reality, the stadium was built to support the Packers. At its original capacity, the wooden bleacher fit more than 5,000 fans. It did not have any bathrooms or locker rooms, meaning that the Packers had to use adjacent facilities, including the downtown Columbus Club, while visiting teams usually got dressed at their hotel before coming to the stadium. Imagine that. The Packers played exclusively at City Stadium for their home games until 1933, when they began playing some games in Milwaukee. In 1933, they played one home game at Borchert Field before playing a few home games a year at Wisconsin State Fair Park from 34 to 1951. In 52, they played 3 games at Marquette Stadium while awaiting the completion of Milwaukee County Stadium, where they would play until 1994, when the team returned to playing all of their home games in Green Bay. In addition to high school and NFL games, City Stadium also hosted a few St. Norbert Green Knights football games from the 1930s to the 1950s. During the stadium's earlier years, seating capacity would fluctuate based on expected crowd sizes, with temporary seating built prior to games. The stadium underwent different improvements and expansions throughout its life. The original wood fence was replaced with a wire and canvas fence in 1927, although a wooden fence returned 8 years later. 1929, a public announcement system with 8 speakers around the stadium was installed. Lighting to allow for high school teams to play night games on Fridays was added in 1935. From 1936 to 1940, City Stadium underwent its most significant enhancements. A locker room for the Packers was built underneath the south stands in 1936, while a year later a new press box, game clock, and fence was added, while the old bleachers were either replaced or significantly repaired. Seating for 5,000 more fans and better toilet facilities were also added. The Packers announced another project the next year to add another 6,500 seats to the stadium by connecting the 2 grandstands, forming a horseshoe shape. This project, which was funded by a Works Progress Administration grant, also added new restrooms, better training areas, and stage for the Lumberjack Band. Another WPA grant in 1940 funded a new sandstone wall that formed a new front entrance for the stadium. In 1956, games from City Stadium were televised for the first time, with 3 games airing on CBS. So you can certainly see as time went on, the stadium certainly grew in size. And, especially early on, the Packers, let me tell you what, for being in I would say remote place, but I mean, cold, and we're talking 100 years ago. And if you think there's global warming going on now, I mean, you figure back then it was cold. People, they love their Packers, they love their football, and one of the things that's an absolute treat, covering those games from like 100 years or so ago, whatever, you know what teams were really loved and appreciated, what professional football teams were, by the amount of coverage that they got in the newspapers. And the Packers, I'll tell you what, if they had a home game, you getting darn near play-by-play coverage almost every game. That's not the case in a lot of other many other teams. Even like New York, the Giants. In 1925, there wasn't no play-by-play results in any of the newspapers for the New York Giants. Absolutely not. But there were some teams that got followed by the papers, and they did a phenomenal job of giving you a real in-depth and detailed look at what happened during each game. So this game was, as I said, once again, was an exhibition game, played the week before the Packers' regular season started, and it wasn't much of a contest at all. It was pretty much of a blowout. But let's go over. Let's take a little dive. Let's check out and see exactly what happened during this one game. And once again, let me share my screen here. All right, this is the Oshkosh Northwestern newspaper, and they did a little write up on it. Here we got the lines right here. Packers defeat Oshkosh 11. Oshkosh win. That's another Oshkosh, but Packers defeat them. All Star, but they got blown out. Let's be fair. But the Oshkosh All Stars put up a scrappy fight to the end, though. So they, it wasn't like, we're down 30-0. Let's just play. Nobody gets hurt. Let's, we know we're going to lose. Let's just get the time to go here. We'll collect our money and we'll go home, and nobody gets hurt. Nobody's feeling. They played. So you can't ask for any more than that, right? Several bright spots show up as a result of a game, and hopes are for a good team. As you saw, which I showed you, they wound up 3-3 on the season. So they certainly weren't the worst team in the world, but they certainly were far from being the best team in the world. They certainly were not in comparison with anybody like the Green Bay Packers. All right. The many Oshkosh people who journeyed to Green Bay Sunday to witness the Packer-Oshkosh All-Star football game may have been a little disappointed in the 46-0 Packer victory, but they were confident that Oshkosh put up a scrappy game and has the makings of a great team. There were 5,000 fans on hand. Now, one thing you're going to also say, and from time to time, you're going to see many differences. Many differences, especially once you go farther, even back in time. Well, I'm starting here in 1930, but you go back in time, you'll see one paper will have this. There was 5,000 fans there. Another paper will have there was 7,500 fans there. Another newspaper said there was 8,000 fans there. One paper might have so-and-so kicking a field goal from the 40-yard line. The next paper will have so-and-so kicking a field goal from the 38-yard line. Another one had him kicking from the 35. So there's a lot of discrepancies. A lot. Of course, you can't go back to ESPN, or go to the NFL channel or not like that and, get the highlights or any, you can't. I mean, this stuff was written in the newspaper and one time and that was it. So some of the stuff is there are discrepancies, especially when sometimes you look at also the, which we're going to go over a little bit, the starting lineups. Sometimes they'll have one guy playing right halfback, another guy be a left halfback, and another newspaper will have those two. The guy right halfback, left, those guys will be switched. I mean, it's very difficult. Sometimes you'll get like 4 or 5 or 6 different papers, and they'll have the guys who came in and substituted for players. They'll have some of those guys will be all switched up and everything. So it was very, very difficult to make heads or tails sometimes of exactly what happened, but. This gives you a good indication here. The Oshkosh Rooters took cognizance of the fact that the local team was thrown together in 3 or 4 former Notre Dame stars. This professional football champions had a team which bowled over everything in its way in the country last season. The benefit of the country's greatest stars in years of organization. The score might have been somewhat different had the All-Stars shown a better defense for passes. So apparently the Packers had a very good aerial assault going in this game. Now this paper here, the Oshkosh Northwestern, briefly goes over it. I'm going to go over another article in another paper, which basically gives you a play-by-play of exactly what happened in all 4 quarters. Cover pass receivers. Once when Llewellyn attempted to throw a pass for Green Bay, the Oshkosh backs covered every eligible receiver on the field, and Llewellyn was thrown for a big loss. In the second half, however, some back was not taking his assignment, and one of the Green Bay's men was consistently getting loose. Several bright spots showed up in the Oshkosh team. One was the return of punts of Johnny Roach, former Notre Dame star. This speedy back zigzagging and twirling through the Green Bay team once for a beautiful 40 or 45-yard run. Ralph Curtis and Swede Johnson did some nice plunging. Brendan Ditch, center, smashed through the line to get into many plays. Ladwig, former Ripon end, made probably the hardest tackle of the day. Dunham looked good at tackle on many plays while on defense, while Bizar, Carroll at end played generally well. Several of the Oshkosh numbers were wrong. As a result, those who held programs were at times confused unless they knew the players. Oshkosh started the game by kicking to Zuid Mulder. Herbert got away for a nice game, but on the next play, Brendan Ditch broke through to get the ball carrier. The Packers finally kicked, and after Oshkosh ran a couple of plays, won an 8-yard run by Ralph Curtis, they lost on a lateral pass play, and Johnson punted. Makes nice run. It was Engelman's pretty run around left end, which put the ball on the 20-yard line and in position for the first Packers score. Jensen N fought off the interference on this play, but in doing so was forced to give ground, and there was little chance to get at the ball. Carrier Molenda Zoodmulder and Engelman in turn carried the ball, and Molenda finally went over. Wooden missed the kick, and the score was 6-0. The quarter ended shortly thereafter. But this is when the onslaught started. In the second quarter, the Packers scored another touchdown, a 22-yard pass. Herbert to Engelman started them off. Llewellyn got away for 11 yards on a long pass, put the ball on the 5-yard line. McCrary slashed over tackle for the second Packers score. Bloodgood missed the kick. The first half ended 12-0. It was in the second quarter that Oshkosh, on a Green Bay attempted pass, had every man covered. It was a pretty world. Looks like. A couple of long passes sent the Bays to another touchdown in the third quarter. Molenda making the final plunge. Herbert made the extra point. Engelman scored next for the Packers. Bloodgood's run when he made 35 yards by feinting off an off-tackle plunge to pull the end in and then cut out around him, added in this goal, which booted the score to 25-0 as the third period ended. Llewellyn made a Packer touchdown at the start of the fourth period when he smashed Drew off left tackle. Dunn kicked for the extra point. Shortly after, Roach got away on his long run and had a couple of men been taken out, might have scored. A pass and a 60-yard run by Zold Mulder and Bloodgood's plunge. Got to scroll back up here. A few minutes later, accounted for the last two Packers' touchdowns. Though beaten by a large score, Oshkosh fought until the final whistle. Now, these were the starting lineups. All right, this is what this paper has in that. I'm going to show you another paper. There could be some discrepancies in there. There are, a lot of times there are, especially when you get many different papers involved, there's bound to be some type of discrepancy. Especially one of the big ones is the halfbacks here. You might get one like Herdis. Here he's the left halfback and Nason is the right halfback. You might get another paper that had Nason as the left halfback and Curtis as the right halfback. So that gets screwed up a lot. It happens. Now you can see the score was only 12-0 at halftime, relatively close game. But see the Packers blew it open, and scored 34 points in the final two quarters. But here's where the substitutions. Now, basically, everybody seemed to get substituted for in this game. This is a lot of substitutions, let me tell you what. But this is what an exhibition game is for, to get everybody in your team in the game. And apparently, both teams did that very well. I mean, this is. So we got the touchdowns here. Molenda scored 2. McCrary scored 1. Engelman scored 1. Llewellyn, Zold Mulder, and Bloodgood. Points after touchdowns, Dunn kicked 2, Herber kicked 1, Molenda kicked 1. The referee was Morris. Umpire was Erdlitz. And the headlinesman was Doyle. Now I said once again, this is. I mean, look here. I'm gonna just for. I mean, it's all right. We'll go here. Bloodgood went in for Dunn. Where are we at here? I thought I saw another one for Blood. All right, this one here. Bloom. Where are we at here? Oh, Bloomquist went in for Kale. I'm gonna say, and then Kale went back in for Bloomquist. So and then Geibel went in for Kale. So. Guys are all over the place. Guys were in the starting lineup. They got substituted in for. They went back in the game. They came back in. Some of the guys switching different positions. But I mean, this is a lot of substitutions. A lot. Sometimes there'll be games where there maybe weren't a substitution at all. I remember one game in particular, the Giants. Their final game of the season in 1925, December 13th, 1925, they played at Cubs Park, which is Wrigley Field. And they played the Chicago Bears. The Giants had one substitute the whole game. They substituted for their left or right end. That was it. So 11 guys started the game, and 10 of those 11 guys played every snap. There was only one guy got substituted for. But something like that with all those substitutions, that's very indicative of an exhibition game. Everybody gets in there. Everybody gets a chance to play. So, but let me show you the Green Bay coverage of this game, and we'll show you it's very, very in depth and detail. I really tell you what, boy, you ever looking for some information on Green Bay? Let me tell you, they get some outstanding coverage of their football game. All right, so let's share the screen here. All right, so I think this is the Green Bay Press Gazette. All right, that's not the one I want to. Try this again here. See if I get the next one here, maybe. Okay, let's try this. All right, here we go. I think this is it. Okay, here we go. So this is the the first page here. Packers open the season with a 46-0 victory. Once again, so here's the this is the starting lineups for both teams, right? The Packers scored 46, Oshkosh nothing. But these are the starting lineups. And once again, here are all the substitutes. Ton of substitutes. I mean, you might get 1/4 of this in a regular season football game. Basically, because unless the guy gets injured, a lot of times they keep the best players in there and they just pretty much play the whole game. Unless it gets out of hand or something like that. But if it's a close, tough game, a lot of times a lot of the guys who start the game stay in there. So, but I'm saying this is very typical of obviously a exhibition game. Now, once again, here's this is the Green Bay Press Gazette. Once again, Packers are up 12-0 at halftime. Then they blew it open in the second half, 34 points in the second half, which kind of shows you that maybe the starters for Oshkosh, obviously were not quite as good as the Packers. But once Oshkosh maybe started putting in some of their substitutes, maybe toward the second half and all that, maybe that's when the game really started getting out of hand. But maybe the starting Oshkosh players, the starting 11, shall we say, obviously once again were not as good as the Packers, but it seemed like they maybe kind of kept it kind of close. All right, so let me go over. Once again, this is a Green Bay Press Gazette. A fantastic job of covering. Okay, so there was 5,000 in this paper. Also says the same thing. As I said, there's many times where you'll have you read a newspaper said 5,000 fans there, and then you read another newspaper that says about the same game, they'll say 7,500 fans there. You read another one that says possibly up to 8,000 fans were there. Like, well, was there 5,000? Was there 8,000? Was there 75? You get that a lot. But here, both newspapers said that there was 5,000 fans there. So the Packers trim Oshkosh before a crowd of 5,000. New men show up good in the first professional grid battle. As I said, the Packers were a very good team that year. Very, very good team. All right, here we go. The Oshkosh All Stars may be a good football team, but it has a lot to learn about the brand of football played by the Green Bay Packers. In the opening professional football game, basically, of the season at City Stadium on Sunday, the Packers convincingly demonstrated that there is a world of difference between the play of national champions, which the Green Bay Packers were in 1929, and the independent professional squads, which the Oshkosh All Stars were, when they trounced Oshkosh by a score of 46-0 before approximately 5,000 fans. It was the same kind of a Packer team that trounced Oshkosh as won the National League title last year. A few members of the 1929 team were missing, but in their places were newcomers who soon earned the esteem of the crowd. Now, I'm going to look real fast there. I'm going to go the previous season. Did they play Oshkosh the year before? Yeah. Okay. Packers didn't play Oshkosh the year before. Okay. I was just wondering if they played them out maybe on a yearly basis, but apparently not. All right. Among those new men were a pair of Green Bay boys, former West High stars, who left a good impression. The youths were Kenneth Radick and Arnold Herber. And please forgive me if Herber is very, very good, but please forgive me if I screw some of these names up. I'm not the greatest at reading people's names. So, Both saw considerable action and figured in several sensational plays. Then there was Dave Zood Mulder, former East High star, who also came into his own by grabbing a forward pass in the last quarter and racing 60 yards for a touchdown. To say nothing about Bloodgood, Engelman, Fitzgibbons, all halfbacks, and Hanny, Sleight, and Zuver, linemen, who played their first football for Green Bay. Play like champions. Of the veteran performers, all played football like champions should play it. Michalske, that wonder guard who always seems to be in the right place, Lavi Dilwig, dean of all ends, Vern Llewellyn, the galloping, kicking halfback, and Johnny Blood were particularly outstanding. You could go on down the list, mentioning every player on the squad, and fans could remember at least one outstanding play in which each individual featured. Captain E.L. Lambeau used every man on his squad, and at no time did the team appear weak. As you saw with that list of the substitutions, you can see, used every man on his squad. And sometimes he used them a couple times. His starting lineup contained practically all the new men, and they soon marched down the field for a touchdown, using nothing but straight football and not once relying on passes for gains. Straight football pretty much means running the football. Oshkosh was better able to cope with the Packers' aerial game. Now, when they say straight, I'm not sure if they mean that, to me, pretty much it means running the football. Now, they mean straight, meaning like straight, meaning nothing around the ends. That I'm not sure. Or if it was all just like north and south, like line bucks. So that I don't know. Oshkosh was better able to cope with the Packers' aerial game than they were with the smashing, hammering off tackles, spinners, and around end plays. It was in this department of the game that the Packers showed up to best advantage. Although their passing was such that it left no doubt in the minds of fans that with another week to polish the attack, it will be just as useful as it was last year when it led Green Bay team to the title. Several Oshkosh men showed up to good advantage, crashing and occasionally to smear Green Bay plays and knock down forward passes, and now and then breaking through for short gains. Johnny Roach, former Notre Dame halfback, Riccotti, a halfback, Johnson, former Appleton fullback, and Red Martin, Rippin Flash, were the outstanding players from the Sawdust City team. At no time, however, was Oshkosh beyond the Packer 40-yard line, and no real scoring threat was presented. Molenda goes over. So now we start talking kind of about the football game here. Taking the ball after the kickoff, Green Bay began a march in the first quarter that led to a touchdown. So now it says here, continued on page 15. So let's go continue here to page 15. Share screen. All right, let me get this here. Page 15. Okay, here we go. All right. And then let's see, Portsmouth. Now we start talking about Portsmouth. That's the Detroit Lions. They were named the Portsmouth Spartans before they were the Detroit Lions. They beat the Newark team. Teamwork from Newark. Newark was not very good that year. Beat them 13-6. All right. Oh, can't read that. Let's see if we can. Okay, see if any of this works in here. Yay, okay, there we go. Okay, ended with the word touchdown. Line bucking plays that sent Engelman, Zood, Mulder, and Lidberg down the field brought the ball to the 30-yard line. Engelman then got off to a great end run behind the interference and carried the ball near the 10-yard line. A few more line bucking plays, and Molenda crashed over for a touchdown. The try for an extra point by a place kick went wide of the posts. A forward pass, Herber till Engelman gave the Packers the ball on the enemy 45-yard line at the start of the second quarter. Captain Lambeau then sent a full new team, and it brought the ball 12 yards nearer the goal on 2 plays. On the third play, Llewellyn dropped back and heaved a pass to Tom Nash, who made a great leaping catch and ran along the sidelines across the goal. The referee ruled that Tom went out of bounds on the 8-yard line, however, and brought the ball back to that spot. An off-tackle smash by Llewellyn carried the ball, picking up 3 yards, and then McCrary smashed through the center of the line for a touchdown. The try for an extra point by kick was wide once again, and the score at the end of the first half was 12-0. Captain Lambeau again shifted his lineup at the start of the third period, and Johnny Blood began to run wild, tearing off wide end runs, for gains of 20 and 35 yards and taking a pair of forward passes out of the air to put the Packers in scoring position. Blood gets away. Blood's first long run brought the ball to the 40-yard line. Herbert then passed to Johnny, who ran to the 28-yard line. Another pass to Blood brought the ball to the Oshkosh 6-yard line. Blood then picked up 3 more on an off-tackle play, and Bo Molenda went over for a touchdown. Herbert dropped kick for the extra point, making the score 19-0. A few minutes later, Blood again broke loose and went around left end for a 35-yard gain before he was down on the 14-yard line. Engelman then picked up 9 yards at right tackle, and Molenda added 4 more at right guard. On the third play, Engelman went over the center of the line for the 4th touchdown. Herbert was rushed, and his kick at an extra point was wide. So that would make a score 25-0. The Packers were in scoring position as the 4th period started due to some good runs and pass plays in which Blood and Fitzgibbons figured. Llewellyn went into the game at the start of the quarter and on 2 tries carried the ball over from the 5-yard line. Dunn placed kick for an extra point. A few minutes later, Dave Zoodmulder took a long pass from Johnny Blood, leaping high in the air to spear the ball and sped past 3 Oshkosh players to run 60 yards for a touchdown. Dunn again placed kick the extra point, and the Packers had a 39-0 advantage. Whew. The final score of the game came a few minutes later after Lavi Dilwig leaped into the air and speared a pass, carrying the ball to the 15-yard line before he was brought down. Lavi evaded 3 men and was nearly clear for a touchdown before he was stopped by Drafts, former Akanto star. Drafts was knocked out tackling Lavi. Molenda picked up 3 yards, and then Bloodgood grabbed the fumble and he looks like it now. Possibly here they missed an M in there. Maybe grabbed the fumble and sliced between the tackle and the end for a 7-yard gain and the final touchdown of the game. Molenda placed kicked the extra point, making the final score 46-0. Now, somewhere here, they have the play-by-play. Here we go. Does it say first quarter someplace? There we go, play-by-play, right? Here we go. So it's 1930. This is the amazing thing with the Packers, the great sense. There are other teams as well, too, but not a lot of them. But it's the amazing thing with the Packers. This is an exhibition game. Nobody cares. But Packers got play-by-play of an exhibition game, 46-0 trouncing of an Oshkosh All-Star game. All-Star team, in an exhibition game in 1930, and we got play-by-play. Amazing. Absolutely freaking amazing. All right. So, are you ready? Let's get going. So, first quarter, Drafts kicks off to Dave Zoodmulder, who returns 28 yards, catching the ball on the goal line. Herbert made 13 yards around left end. Engelman lost 2 yards at right tackle. On a cutback, Zoodmulder
picked up 9 yards at right tackle. Herbert held for no gain, there being an apparent mix-up in signals. Herbert punted to O'Keefe, who was down in his tracks on the 19-yard line. Oshkosh took timeout. When play was resumed, Johnson lost 1 yard at left end. Curtis cut back over the middle of the line for 10 yards. On the next play, Johnson plunged for 4 yards, but as the Packers were offsides, they were penalized 5 yards, giving Oshkosh a first down. On a double pass play, Nason was thrown for a 13-yard loss. Curtis lost 7 on an attempted left end run, and Johnson punted to Herbert, who returned 8, all the way up to the top here, returned 8 yards to the Packer 47-yard line. So now the Packers have the ball right around midfield. Engelman made 4 yards at right tackle. Zood Mulder lost 3 yards at right end. Engelman made 5 yards at right tackle. Hall went in for grunts of Oshkosh. Herbert punted, and the ball was down by a Packer man on the Oshkosh 11-yard line. O'Keefe made no gain on a left end run. Johnson plunged for 5 yards over the Packer, like in the middle of the line. Molenda went in for Lidberg, who hurt his leg on the play. Johnson punted, and Herbert lugged the ball back 15 yards to the Oshkosh 45-yard line. On the first play, Engelman ran around right end for 26 yards with good interference. Zoodmulder plunged over guard for 4 yards, but Oshkosh drew a 5-yard penalty for being offside. Molenda made a first down with a 6-yard plunge over center. Molenda added 2 more at right guard, and Zoodmulder followed with a 3 yards in the same place. Engelman made 1.5 yards at right tackle, putting the ball on the 1 yard from the goal, where Bo Molenda carried it over on the next play. So Molenda got a 1-yard touchdown run. Wooden missed the try for extra point when his place kick went wild. Wooden kicked off to Curtis, who returned 5 yards to the 21-yard line. Nason lost 3 on a left end run, and then followed with a 4-yard gain over the middle of the line. Curtis made 4 yards at right tackle, and Johnson got off a 45-yard punt, the ball rolling dead. Herbert made 3 yards at right tackle, made 3 yards at right end, as the quarter ended. The second quarter. Several substitutes went into the game for Oshkosh at the start of the quarter. On the first play, Herbert tossed a pretty pass over the middle of the line for a gain of 20 yards. Engelman catching the pass and putting it on the Oshkosh 45-yard line. The Packers, at this juncture, changed their entire team. On the first play, Llewellyn dashed 12 yards on a cutback over left tackle. Lou passed to Nash, who ran 15 yards before being forced out of bounds on the 8-yard line. Fitzgibbons made 6 yards at right tackle, bringing the ball down to the 2. On a spinner, McCrary made a touchdown, and Bloodgood failed to add the extra point as his drop kick was blocked. So now it scores 12-0. Drafts kicked off to Llewellyn, who returned to the Packers' 43-yard line. Now, this happened quite a bit back then. A lot of times, the team that got scored upon would sometimes kick off to the other team, hoping to play the field position battle, right? If they could kick off to the other team and pin them down there and force the other team to punt, they would get the ball maybe around the 50-yard line, maybe, the better field position. So a lot of times, back then, the team that got scored on would actually kick the ball off, unlike today. Right. All right. So the Packers had the ball at the 43-yard line. Britton replaced Johnson for Oshkosh. McCrary made 2 yards on a line plunge. Lou tried a pass. I'm thinking that might be Llewellyn. Tried a pass to Fitzgibbons, which was incomplete. And another attempted pass play, Llewellyn was thrown for a 15-yard loss before he could get rid of the ball. Llewellyn punted, and Roach returned 10 yards back to his own 28-yard line. Clems made no gain at center. Roach made 3 yards at left tackle, and Clems punted to Bloodgood, who returned 15 yards to midfield. Now, that's happened a lot, too. Sometimes teams would punt on third down. Llewellyn made 10 yards at left tackle. Fitzgibbons made 4 yards on a cutback at right tackle. McCrary fumbled, but Hubbard recovered on Oshkosh's 29-yard line for a first down. Llewellyn made 3 yards at right tackle. Bloodgood tried the pass to Fitzgibbons, which went wild. Llewellyn made 5 yards, but the Packers got a 5-yard penalty for being offside. Llewellyn tried a pass, which was incomplete, and the Packers drew a penalty for a second incomplete pass, which happened back then too. That was a penalty. Packers tried another pass from Lou to Dilwig, which was not complete. The ball went to Oshkosh, and after some discussion, the Packers were also penalized 5 yards for the additional incomplete pass. Britton failed to gain at center. Martin tried a pass, which Dilwig intercepted on the Packers' 45-yard line. Llewellyn on cutback made 7 yards at right tackle. Llewellyn tried a pass to Fitzgibbons, which was incomplete. On a spinner play, McCrary failed to gain. Llewellyn punted, and Bowdoin down the ball on the 9-yard line. Roach made 1 yard at left tackle. McCrary hurt on a timeout with 3.5 minutes left to go. Martin made 4 yards at right end. Britton made 1 yard at right guard, but Oshkosh suffered a 15-yard penalty for holding. Martin got off a poor punt, but on the play, the Packers took a 5-yard penalty for being offside. Martin punted to Bloodgood, who returned 5 yards to the Oshkosh 40-yard line. Fitz made no gain at right end, and then he tried to pass to Llewellyn, which was incomplete. An incomplete pass from Llewellyn to Fitzgibbons brought a 5-yard penalty to the Packers. An attempted pass from Bloodgood to Llewellyn met the same fate. Oshkosh completed a pass from Martin to Clems as the first half ended, the play giving them a 15-yard gain. So now we got 12-0 at the halftime. So things changed quite a bit in the second half here. So the third quarter, Clems kicked off to Hermer, ran it back about 20 yards to the 29-yard line. Engelman made 3 yards at right tackle for the Packers. Blood celebrated his first attempt to carry the ball with a 20-yard dash around right end. Engelman carried the ball out of bounds for a 1-yard gain. Herbert passed to Blood, who ran 10 yards to the 28-yard line, and Engelman made a yard at right tackle. Molenda failed to gain at center, and Herbert passed to Blood, and the ball was down on the Oshkosh 6-yard line. Blood made 3 yards at left tackle. Molenda made 2 yards at center, and then down to the 1-yard line, and then he crashed over right tackle for a touchdown from 1 yard down. Herbert drop kicked for the extra point, making the score 19-0. Clems kicked off, and it was a very feeble attempt, Zuver getting the ball on the Packer 45-yard line. Engelman made 3 yards at right tackle. A pass from Blood to Engelman was incomplete. Blood raced around left end for 35 yards, going out of bounds on the 14-yard line. Engelman made 9 yards at right tackle. Molenda made 4 yards at right guard. Engelman went over the center of the line for a touchdown. So they went out of bounds at the 14-yard line. Engelman made 9 yards at right tackle down to the 5. Molenda made 4 yards at right guard down to the 1, and Engelman went over the center of the line from 1 yard out for a touchdown. Herbert was rushed on his try for extra point, and the kick went wild. The score was 25-0. Wooden kicked off to Nason, who returned it 15 yards before Radick downed him. Brennan made no gain at center. Nason no gain at right tackle. Martin got off a beautiful kick, and the ball going out of bounds on the Packers' 20-yard line after traveling about 60 yards. Blood lost 2 yards at left end and then made 8 yards on a cutback play. Pass Blood to Herbert was incomplete. Blood punted to Martin, who was down on the 44-yard line. On a double pass play, Michalske broke through and spilled Nason for a 10-yard loss. Brennan made no gain. Martin punted, and the ball went out of bounds on the Packers' 22-yard line. Herbert made 5 yards at right end, and Engelman made 1 on a line buck. Fitzgibbons went in for Engelman, and several other substitutions were made by the Packers. Fitzgibbons made 3 yards at right tackle. Blood punted, and Martin was down by Radick after a 5-yard return. Draft's pass was incomplete. Nason, no gain at right tackle. Martin punted 45 yards to Herbert, who returned 10 yards. Fitzgibbons ran right end for 13 yards with good interference. Blood passed to Fitzgibbons for a 12-yard gain. Molenda made 6 yards at center, and Blood went around right end for 20 yards. Molenda made 3 at right tackle as the third quarter came to an end. So, Packers with the ball. Fitzgibbons crashed through right tackle for 3 yards. Blood cracked the center of the Oshkosh line for 7 yards and a first down on the 4-yard line. Molenda picked up 2 yards down to the 2-yard line. Llewellyn replaced Fitzgibbons at the left halfback for the Packers. So now they have the ball at the 2-yard line, and Llewellyn added a yard at right tackle on the next play. He slipped through the same spot down for a touchdown, so he went in from 1 yard out. Dunn Place kicked the extra point. Wooden kicked off to Martin, and he was dropped by Ken Radick after a 15-yard return. Bowden replaced Wooden. Roach failed to gain at right tackle. A pass by Martin was incomplete. Another pass was knocked down by Radick, and Oshkosh was given the customary 5-yard penalty. Johnson punted 48 yards, and Dunn was down in his tracks. Blood added a yard on a run around right end. Llewellyn failed to gain at right tackle, and a pass from Llewellyn to Blood was incomplete. Llewellyn punted to Roach in Oshkosh's 15-yard line, and Martin made a beautiful return to midfield. Zood Mulder went in for Llewellyn. Dilweg replaced Radick at left end. Johnson slid through right tackle for 4 yards. And on the next play, the Packers were offside and were penalized 5 yards. Johnson added a yard and a first 10 at center. Johnson cracked right tackle for 2 yards. Britton replaced Johnson for Oshkosh. Roach failed to gain at left tackle. A forward pass by Stilp was grounded, and another pass by Stilp was grounded, and Oshkosh was penalized the customary 5 yards for 2 incomplete passes. The Packers took the ball on downs, and on the first play, Blood failed to gain on a wide end sweep. Dave Zoodmulder caught Blood's 25-yard pass and ran the remaining 45 yards for a touchdown. So basically, it's like a 70-yard pass play. Caught a 25-yard pass and ran 45 yards. So a 70-yard pass play. It was a pretty piece of running by Zoodmulder, and he easily outdistanced the field. Dunn added the extra point. Bloodgood replaced Dunn at quarterback for the Packers. Michalske, maybe, possibly, kicked the Roach and then made the tackle on the Oshkosh 33-yard line. A pass by Roach was incomplete. Britton found the center of the Packer line for 5 yards. A pass from Stilp to Roach gained 15 yards. Stilp then lost 15 yards when Hubbard broke through and tackled him before he could pass the ball. A pass by Stilp was incomplete. Nash intercepted an Oshkosh pass on the 48-yard line and was tackled in his tracks. Dilweg took Blood's forward pass and ran 25 yards to the 15-yard line with good interference. Zoodmulder hit right tackle for 3 yards. Molenda picked up 2 yards at center. Bloodgood scooped up a fumble and converted it into a touchdown on a crash through the center of the Oshkosh line. Molenda made good on the try for extra point. Michalske, could be, kicked to Roach, and he returned the ball to the 28-yard line. A pass from Stilp was intercepted by Nash as the game ended with the final score: Packers 46, Oshkosh nothing. We got some things over here. A lot of things over here. Side lights. For those who favor statistics, it will be interesting to know that the Packers gained 280 yards from scrimmage, while Oshkosh only gained 67 yards. Packers completed 8 forward passes and tried 18. So, to say that they didn't pass the football back then was not true. Packers threw the ball 18 times. For a total, they completed 8 passes for a total of 225 yards. Oshkosh gained 30 yards by completing 2 of 12 passes. Packers made 20 first downs to 4 by the Invaders and stayed about even on the exchange of punts. The Packers were penalized 40 yards to 25 yards for Oshkosh. 3 Oshkosh passes were intercepted by Green Bay men, while no Green Bay passes were intercepted by Oshkosh. Nash intercepted 2 passes, and Lavi Dilwig intercepted 1. The Path newsreel cameramen were on hand to take sound pictures of the opening game. They will be shown in this part of the country within a week. So I guess there was some video coverage or pictures were taken of the game, but if you're ever going to find it, good luck and God bless you. I have no idea if it even exists anymore. The Legion Band did its share in entertainment, playing several selections before the game and between quarters and during the half rest period. The VitaVox public address system was used again, giving a running account of the battle. Homer Collett was at the microphone. The game was broadcast to the fans throughout Wisconsin by WHBY St. Norbert's College, the pair radio station with Harold T. Shannon and Hal Lansing at the microphone. Cal Hubbard was much in evidence, rushing forward passes and holding his own on the offense. On one occasion, both he and Michalske missed Johnny Roach when they tried to stop him 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage and then handed each other verbal raspberries. Perry also played a great game at tackle position, and in the first 3 plays of the game spilled Oshkosh backs twice behind the line of scrimmage. In the closing periods of the game, Oshkosh began using the forward pass game quite extensively, so the Packers used 5 men back of the line to knock down passes. Darling was pulled out from the line to the secondary and broke up several of the pass plays. Carl Lidberg, who went out of the game in the first quarter with a wrenched ankle, will not be laid up more than a day or 2 with the injury, doctors said. The ankle is only slightly sprained, and he should be in shape to play again next Sunday against the Cardinals, which would be the next game I'm covering. Be the Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Cardinals. The field and stands presented an attractive setting for the game. The turf is in the best of shape, while the stands recently painted give the field the atmosphere of a college stadium. The spectators were eager to give Oshkosh men a hand when they pulled good plays. In the last half, when Johnny Roach returned a punt more than 30 yards to midfield, looting several Packers by sidestepping the fans, gave him a great hand. They also applauded for Swede Johnson, former Appleton fullback, who played a fine game for the Invaders. Eddie Kodal, I'm going to say that possibly that's his name, popular halfback of the 1929 team and now coach of the Lawrence College varsity, was an interested spectator on the sidelines, and he was introduced to the crowd by the VitaVox system, but he was too modest to take a bow. So there you go. That was the Packers in their warm-up game, tune-up game, exhibition game, whatever you want to call it, beating the Oshkosh All Stars by a score of 46-0. So the next game I do will be the first one of the season for the Green Bay Packers in 1930 when they take on the Chicago Cardinals. So that's how it was on September 14th, 1930, between the Oshkosh All Stars and the Green Bay Packers on pro football's first 50 years. I'll see you next time.